the Avvadon ransomware gang decides to let the keys out of the bag.
So, Mike, some updates on the Avvadon ransomware. Good news, it sounds like. What can you tell us?
Yeah, it's always nice when we can talk about positive developments in the cybersecurity landscape, right? I mean, there's usually a lot more negative news, if you will, than positive. But this one's actually a good story. So the Avvadon ransomware gang, which has been in operation for about a year, give or take, has apparently decided to shut down operations. They have apparently sent their encryption keys to Bleeping Computer, of all places, and said, hey, here are encryption keys, and sent them a zip file holding about 3,000 encryption keys for currently active victims. And Bleeping Computer shared that payload with a security organization to do some validation and make sure that the keys were in fact legitimate and not, some, Trojan in its own right. And they were validated by an organization called Emisoft, and Emisoft actually created a general purpose decryptor, which they have since released so that anybody who has been infected with the Avvadon ransomware could then decrypt their files, for free. And it's interesting because given the high activity rate around ransomware and some of the really very public impacts of ransomware in the past several months, it has really sort of shined a new spotlight on this activity. And there was a time not too long ago when the popularity of ransomware kind of dipped in favor of things like crypto mining, which was a less confrontational, less destructive monetization tactic for advanced persistent threat groups to engage in. Certainly, it never supplanted ransomware, and ransomware has continued to be popular. But with the recent pipeline attacks that we've seen, and some of the others that have had massive impacts on critical infrastructure related organizations, it's really sort of one hopes woken the sleeping dragon, if you will, of the U.S. government to take, some very decided and directed action against these organizations. So I don't think it's really a great time to be in the ransomware game. I think there's a lot of unwanted publicity and a lot of unwanted heat there. I think that with the new administration getting back into more positive international relationships, that there is a much higher likelihood of there being some, concerted action against these groups. And I think that this is a sign that some of them are choosing to, take the money and run. And certainly some of the folks that were negotiating ransoms with this particular gang sort of saw that, because they stopped pushing back. They stopped asking for additional changes. They took the last credible offer and just were trying to close it out as much business as they could in the llast couple of days leading up to the release of the keys. So it was certainly a planned thing. They certainly grabbed all the cash they could on the way out the door. It's certainly nice to see another one shut down, at least for this point in time.
Yeah, that's fascinating what you said at the end there about them no longer trying to negotiate and just trying to close out all the accounts, almost like a ransomware fire sale, where it's just like everything's got to go. We're done. We're as cheap as we can let it go. We're going to let it go. That's wild. But yeah, I guess this always was a business. It's really cool that they're. I think MZSoft released a free decryptor for everybody who's had this problem in the past, and that's a really good sign of goodwill. I mean, I've heard of that happening a number of times before for a couple major families. I think maybe Tesla Crypt was the biggest one that I had heard of that the decryptor was released for. But yeah, that's really something. I mean, I hope you're right. I hope that you're absolutely right, and that now that there's renewed interest, let's just say, in ransomware and going after the people who operate it, that we're going to see a decline in it. Once it becomes a problem that the FBI or whatever law enforcement agency has been tasked with, you're solving this in a big way, you got to bring the hammer down. I hope there is a change, because it's been such a problem over the last few years. Just the number of organizations that have been hit, and the size and scope of the organizations that have been hit.
Well, there's a couple of things that are driving this. Obviously, the rise of cryptocurrencies really drove the explosion of the ransomware phenomenon, right? Previously they were trying to extort people for credit cards or gift cards, payment cards, something like that. Ransomware and cryptocurrency, man, they're like chocolate and peanut butter. They're two, they just go together, right? If you're a criminal actor, but now law enforcement has come up with better strategies for dealing with that. Rather than going after the wallet holders, you go after the exchanges that are hosting the wallet. So now you shut down the entire crypto exchange and hit them with legal action. And if nothing else, you can freeze up the payments, right? So you're starting to see in various jurisdictions, them taking a different tactic, right? So they're going after the infrastructure that supports the crypto payments, in addition to trying to find the threat actors themselves. So that's going to put, kind of an increasing stranglehold on the funds, hopefully. And, from a lessons learned perspective, when folks do get hit with ransomware, I always suggest that they hang on to the encrypted files for exactly this reason, because you never know when, the crypto, variant that you were hit with could release keys, whether those are, like this, where they shut down, they release the keys as a sign of good faith and, hopefully, an appeasing of law enforcement to not go after them as aggressively, or if law enforcement takes them down and recovers the keys. Either way, those files that are encrypted that you otherwise lost may still have value depending upon how much time has passed, but storage is cheap. So it's a good idea to hang on to those encrypted files.
And that's true. And one more thing that comes to mind is that some of these supposed ransomwares are really not actually encrypting the files either. So if you have someone who can take a closer look at it for you, you may find that file names have been changed. You may find that it's been, base 64 encoded, something silly like that. Don't ever get rid of it if you can help it.